Don't open that box, sir. Please don't touch it. Mr. Vale, listen to me. There's something bad inside. Harrison Vale stood at the head of a long marble table in the grand ballroom of the Vale estate. A polished silver letter opener rested in one hand, a velvet ribbon between his fingers. On the table before him lay a tall white gift box wrapped in deep green silk, the centerpiece of his milestone birthday celebration. It was the special present his closest business partner had personally placed there an hour earlier, insisting Harrison open it in front of all the guests. For one long second, Harrison did not move. Across the room near the side hallway that led to the kitchens, Grace Whitaker, the head of household staff, froze with a tray still balanced in her hands. "Ivy," Grace said, hurrying toward her daughter. Her voice was low, frightened and full of apology before she even reached the front of the room. "Baby, come here right now. Come to Mama, please." But Ivy did not move. "She put something inside it," Ivy said. "I saw her do it." Across the ballroom, Victoria Lang rose slowly from the chair beside Harrison. She wore an emerald gown, soft and elegant, with diamond earrings catching the light of the chandeliers. Until that moment, she had looked like a woman thoroughly enjoying her best friend's milestone birthday, the woman everyone called Harrison's right hand. The partner who had helped grow Vale Industries into the empire it was today. Now her smile tightened at the edges just slightly, the way silk pulls when it begins to tear. "Excuse me," Victoria said. Ivy pointed at the green silk box. "You went into the gift room. You took something out of your bag. You put it inside that box before you tied the ribbon back. I was behind the plant." A murmur passed through the guests like wind moving through grass. It was meant to be a quiet, elegant birthday celebration. Only a carefully chosen group of guests, all thoughtfully selected. Family, lifelong friends, business partners, no press, no outsiders, just trust and a milestone birthday earned through decades of hard work. Victoria placed one hand against her chest as though the accusation itself had struck her. "That is a horrible thing to say," she said, her voice still soft but no longer warm. "Ivy, sweetheart, I don't know what you think you saw, but you cannot run into a private celebration in front of all these people and accuse me of trying to hurt Harrison." Grace reached Ivy and put both hands on her shoulders. "Mr. Vale, Miss Lang, I am so sorry," Grace said, her voice trembling. "She must have misunderstood something. She was supposed to be in the staff room watching a movie." "I didn't misunderstand," Ivy said. Her voice shook, but she did not back down. "I saw her. I saw the whole thing." Victoria gave a short, disbelieving laugh. "She saw the whole thing," she repeated, looking around at the guests. "A young girl hiding behind a plant now knows more than the adults preparing a birthday party." "I wasn't hiding to be bad," Ivy said. "I was just looking at the presents because they were pretty. Then I saw you come in. You looked at the door first. Then you took the lid off Mr. Vale's box. Then you put something inside it and tied it back." A man near the middle of the table leaned toward his wife and muttered, "She probably wants attention." Another guest, an older woman in pearls, shook her head sadly. "Children get jealous at events like this. Her mother works here. She must want to be part of the celebration. Maybe she saw a movie about something like this." Someone else whispered, "She's making up a story." Grace heard it. Her shoulders stiffened, but she kept her eyes down. Ivy heard it too. Her small face hardened with the stubborn dignity of a child who knew she was being doubted, but had not yet learned to surrender. "I don't want attention," she said. "I'm telling the truth." Harrison set the letter opener down slowly. "Ivy," he said carefully, "look at me." She did. "Are you sure you didn't see one of the staff arranging the gift? Maybe adjusting the bow, the way they do for photographs?" "No, sir. It came from Ms. Victoria's purse, the little black one with the gold flower on it. She has it on her chair right now." Every eye in the room turned toward the chair beside Harrison. The small black clutch sat there exactly as Ivy had described. Victoria followed Harrison's gaze toward the chair, and then quickly looked back at him with a calm, almost amused expression. "Yes, Harrison, that's my clutch. I've had it with me all evening. The same way every woman at this table has had her bag. Are we now searching purses based on the imagination of a child?" A few uncomfortable laughs rippled through the nearest guests. The kind of laughs people give when they want a moment to end. Ivy did not laugh. Grace did not laugh. And in the back of the room, near the service doorway, Grace could feel the older waitstaff watching her with the particular sympathy reserved for someone whose child had just embarrassed them in front of the wrong people. Harrison glanced around the table. The other gifts sat stacked on the long display tables along the side wall. Cards, wines, watches, custom cufflinks, framed photographs, a vintage record still in its sleeve. Nothing about any of them seemed unusual, and not one other person in the entire ballroom looked afraid. "Ivy," Harrison said more gently now. "Everyone else's gifts look fine. Nothing is wrong with the table. Are you certain it was that box?" "Yes, sir. The big green one with the white satin inside the bow. Ms. Grace said it was your special one, because Ms. Victoria brought it herself, and made everyone put it in the middle." At the service doorway, Grace went very still. Ivy was right. Victoria had insisted on placing the green silk box in the centerpiece position. She had even adjusted the angle twice so the ribbon faced Harrison's seat. Victoria saw Grace's expression and spoke quickly. "Yes, I positioned it because I wanted Harrison to see it first. That is what a friend does when she has spent months finding the perfect gift for a man who already owns everything. She makes sure he opens it first. Is that now a crime?" She turned her gaze back to Ivy. The softness disappeared. "But this, sweetheart, this is wrong. It is hurtful. I am standing here as Harrison's oldest friend in front of the people who love him, and you are accusing me of putting something dangerous in his birthday gift. Do you understand what you are saying?" Ivy's fingers tightened around the small stuffed rabbit she had been holding since the staff hallway. "I understand," she said. "I'm trying to keep him safe." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Enough." Grace lowered her voice. "Ivy, baby, please come with me. We'll talk in the back." But Ivy suddenly moved. Before Grace could stop her, before Harrison understood what she was about to do, Ivy darted forward, grabbed the green silk box with both hands, and pulled it toward the edge of the table away from him. Gasps rose around the table. "Ivy!" Grace cried. "Put that down!" Victoria snapped, her voice losing its warmth completely. Ivy held the box against her chest as carefully as she could, both arms wrapped around it. "He can't open this. Please, please don't let him." Harrison pushed back his chair. "Ivy," he said, now firm, "hand me the box." "No, sir." "Ivy, it's a gift. It will not hurt me." Harrison stepped toward her and reached out. Ivy turned her small body away, but he caught the edge of the box before it slipped. For one tense moment, their hands were on the same green silk lid. Ivy's eyes filled with tears, but she did not let go. "Let go," he said. "Please, let go of the box, Ivy." She hesitated. Harrison used that moment to firmly draw the box from her arms, not violently, but with the kind of decisive strength a man uses when he believes he is protecting a child from her own confusion. The box returned to the table with a soft thud against the polished marble. Ivy stood frozen, her arms now empty. The stuffed rabbit lay forgotten on the floor at her feet. Victoria pressed a hand over her mouth, as though she were the one being harmed. "My God," she said softly. "She tried to take your birthday gift out of your hands, Harrison, in front of everyone. This is not a misunderstanding anymore. This is something serious." Beatrice Vale, Harrison's older sister, watched her brother closely. She had not spoken yet. At an age where she had lived long enough to distrust both panic and performance, her eyes moved from Ivy's stiff little posture to Victoria's trembling hand, then to the green silk box at the center of the table. Harrison looked at the guests. Their faces were tense, expectant, embarrassed for him. He could feel the evening slipping. He could feel Victoria beside him, wounded and impatient. Most of all, he wanted to believe that the woman who had stood beside him at every product launch for many years had not just walked into his gift room and put something dangerous inside his birthday box. So he picked up the letter opener. "Enough," Harrison said, though not unkindly. "The box is fine. It is a birthday present from one of the closest friends I have ever had." "Harrison," Beatrice said quietly. He looked at her. "It's all right." Victoria touched his arm. "You don't have to prove anything. We can simply set it aside. We can open it tomorrow. I don't want you to feel pressured." But the way she said it made it sound as though she very much needed him to open it right now in front of everyone before the moment passed. Harrison glanced at Ivy. The child stood with her shoulders rigid, her small hands now clenched at her sides. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging anymore. She was simply watching him with the heartbreaking patience of someone who had said everything she knew how to say and could only wait to see if it mattered. "Just the lid," Harrison said. "Then we can stop frightening each other." He slid the letter opener under the satin ribbon and gave a gentle pull. The bow loosened. He set the opener down and lifted the lid carefully with both hands. A few seconds passed, then 10, then 20. Inside, on a bed of folded white tissue paper, sat a beautiful antique chess set. Hand-carved ivory pieces, a deep walnut board, a small handwritten card tucked beside the king. A nervous laugh moved through the room. Someone near the back clapped, and several others joined in, relieved that the strange moment had passed. Victoria closed her eyes dramatically and leaned one hand against the back of Harrison's chair. "Oh, thank God," she whispered loudly enough for the guests at the head of the table to hear. "Harrison, I was terrified." She turned slightly, pressing her fingertips to her lips. "I just want this night to be beautiful for you." She looked pale now, but not the way Harrison did a minute later. Hers was a public kind of relief, arranged for the room to witness. Harrison reached down and picked up the small card, as his fingers slipped beneath the chessboard to lift it slightly, looking for the signature on the underside. The way collectors sometimes do, a sharp, hot sting shot through the pad of his thumb. He pulled his hand back quickly. A bead of blood welled up against his skin. "Ouch," he said softly, almost embarrassed by the small sound. He looked at his thumb. There was a tiny puncture, no bigger than a pinprick, but it was already purling red. "Harrison," Victoria said, "it's nothing. There must be a pin somewhere under the lining. They sometimes use them to hold the velvet in place." He pressed his thumb against a napkin. Ivy was already moving. "Mama, get Mr. Vale a doctor, right now." Grace stepped forward. "Ivy, baby. Mama, please." Beatrice stood, her chair sliding back a few inches. There was something in her sister's instinct that had been alive since the moment Victoria placed that box on the center of the table. "Harrison, let me see your hand." He held it out, half amused, half indulgent. It's a pinprick." She looked at it carefully. Then she looked at the chess set. Then she looked at Victoria. "Did you wrap this yourself?" "Of course I did. I wouldn't trust a gift like this to a shop." "And the linings?" "It came that way from the dealer." "Beatrice, what are you implying?" Beatrice did not answer. Her eyes stayed on Harrison's thumb. The skin around the small wound was beginning to redden in a way that pin marks did not usually redden, and a faint heat was rising up his hand. "Harrison," she said, "sit down." "I'm fine." The first wave hit a moment later. A strange tightness moved up his forearm. His vision shimmered at the edges, as though someone had quickly waved a hand in front of a candle. He shifted in his chair and pressed his other hand lightly against the table. Heat rose up the back of his neck. The scent of roses, perfume, candle wax, and chilled champagne pressed against him all at once. He swallowed. His mouth had gone dry. "Harrison," Beatrice said sharply now. "I'm fine," he answered automatically. But he was not. A wave of nausea rolled through him, sudden and unmistakable. He tried to push back his chair, but the motion made the room tilt. His face lost color. One hand gripped the edge of the table. Victoria rushed toward him with a cry so loud several guests flinched. "Harrison! Oh my God, Harrison, what is happening?" She reached for his shoulder. Beatrice stepped between them so quickly that Victoria nearly stumbled. "Don't touch him," Beatrice said. Her voice was glass. "Beatrice, he is my best friend. Move away from my brother." A man rose quickly from a chair 3 seats down. Dr. Samuel Brooks had been Harrison's personal physician for many years, and he had not earned that position by hesitating. "Everyone step back, give him air." He was already at Harrison's side, 2 fingers pressed to his wrist, the other hand checking his pupils. "Harrison, look at me. Look right here. Tell me what you feel." "My hand," Harrison managed, "burning. Up the arm." "What did he touch?" Samuel asked sharply, looking around. "There was a pin," Beatrice said, "under the lining of the chessboard." He pricked his thumb. "Nobody touches that box," Samuel said. The command snapped through the room like a whip. "Nobody touches that lid. Nobody touches that lining. Nobody touches the card or the pieces. The box stays exactly where it is." Victoria covered her face with both hands. "This is a nightmare. This was supposed to be the happiest night of his life." She was crying now. Real tears or convincing ones. The difference no longer mattered to anyone in the family. "I bought him that set. I researched it for months. Oh God, what if the dealer—" "Victoria," Beatrice said, "step away, now." Victoria lowered her hands slowly. "Beatrice, I'm scared too." "Step away." Victoria stepped back. Ivy stood beside her mother now, very still, watching the adults finally move with the urgency she had tried to give them minutes earlier. She did not look pleased. She did not look proud. She looked like a child who had been carrying something far too heavy and was finally allowed to set part of it down. Samuel was already on his phone. An ambulance was called. Harrison's private security driver also pulled the car around in case they could move faster. 2 of the security team stationed at the perimeter took up positions on either side of the head of the table, not letting anyone, family or guest, approach the chess box. "Samuel, what is this?" Harrison asked through gritted teeth. The nausea had become a roar in his stomach. His thumb felt as though it had been dipped in boiling water, and his fingers were beginning to feel strange and distant. "I don't know yet, but you only made contact with the pin. We caught it early, that matters." Samuel turned to Beatrice. "We move him now. Stretcher in the side hall. Pulse is elevated but stable. Whatever it is, the dose was small and it entered through a tiny wound. That is the best version of this." "And the worst?" Beatrice asked quietly. Samuel did not answer her, which was its own answer. As 2 paramedics rolled a stretcher through the ballroom doors, conversation among the guests had collapsed into stunned silence. A foundation board member near the wall whispered to his wife, "The girl, the little girl, knew." His wife only nodded, pale. Harrison was helped from his chair. As Samuel and the security men guided him toward the side hall, he turned his head, searching the room. He found Ivy. Their eyes met. He said nothing. He was too sick to speak, but the look on his face had changed. It was no longer indulgent. It was no longer apologetic. It was something else entirely. It was the look of a man who had just learned that a child had seen what he had refused to see. The green silk box remained on the table beneath the chandelier. The ivory chess pieces gleamed in the candlelight, as though nothing had happened to them at all. By the time Harrison Vale reached the hospital, the birthday celebration had become something no amount of money could quietly cover up. The ambulance rolled through the private emergency entrance, its lights painting the glass doors red. Beatrice stayed beside Harrison, one hand braced near the stretcher, giving short instructions to the trauma team as they moved. Single puncture wound, right thumb, contact with unknown substance via concealed pin in a wrapped gift. Symptoms started within moments: burning, nausea, dizziness. Patient is stable, conscious, talking. He is also stubborn, so do not let him try to walk. Harrison, lying flat now, tried to lift his head. "I can hear you," Beatrice stepped in beside the stretcher before anyone else could answer. You can hear. You cannot speak. You cannot argue. You cannot stand. Those are the new rules, until I say otherwise. Under any other circumstance, Harrison might have smiled. But another wave of strange heat moved through his arm, and he closed his eyes against the bright hospital lights. Behind them came the rest of the Vale family in a tense, frightened cluster. Harrison's younger brother, Reed, hurried in still in his evening jacket. Harrison's adult son, Owen, who had flown in that morning from Boston, walked beside his uncle with his jaw clenched and his coat thrown over one arm. Then came Grace and Ivy. Grace held Ivy's hand tightly as they entered the hospital lobby. Ivy stood close to her mother's side, the small stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. She had not wanted to come. She had said so twice in the car. Mama, they don't want us there. The family should be alone. But Beatrice Vale had heard her in the back of the ambulance bay and had turned, her face pale, but her voice steady. Your daughter tried to save my brother tonight. That makes you family enough to come. Grace had not known what to say after that. Now in the hospital waiting area, the separation between worlds was painfully clear. The Vales were directed toward a private family lounge with leather chairs, fresh coffee, bottled water, and a nurse assigned only to them. Grace paused at the doorway, unsure if she was allowed to enter. Beatrice noticed. Mrs. Whitaker, she said softer now. Please come in. Grace hesitated. Ma'am, we can wait outside. No, you and Ivy stay where I can see you. Ivy climbed into a chair near the corner, her feet not touching the floor. Owen Vale sat across from her, still holding his phone in one hand. He studied Ivy for a moment, then leaned forward slowly. You're Ivy, right? Ivy nodded. I'm Owen, Harrison's son. His voice trembled slightly, despite his attempt to sound composed. You were the one who tried to stop him from opening the box. Yes, sir. Owen swallowed. What did you see? Grace stiffened. Mr. Vale, she's already had a hard night. I know, Owen said quickly. I'm sorry, I'm not pushing her, I just want to understand. Ivy looked down at her rabbit. I saw Miss Victoria in the gift room. She had a little glass tube in her hand. She unscrewed the box at the bottom. The bottom slides, did you know? And she stuck the tube under the cloth. Then she screwed it back together. The room was quiet. Reed stood near the window with his arms folded. Did anyone call the police? Beatrice answered without looking away from the hallway. Harrison's chief of security, Malcolm Reed, is already at the estate. Samuel ordered the box untouched, the lining, the pieces, the ribbon, all preserved. Malcolm is copying the gift room cameras. Reed's eyes narrowed. Good. Because if this is what it looks like, this is not a family matter anymore. Grace heard the words and felt Ivy's hand tighten around hers. Inside the exam room, nurses worked quickly. Harrison was connected to a monitor. Blood was drawn for tox screening. An IV was started, and a slow drip of activated charcoal was prepared in case it could absorb anything that had reached his bloodstream. Samuel watched every reading with the focused calm of a man who had treated Harrison for many years and had never seen him in this kind of bed. After some time, Harrison's breathing steadied. The strange heat in his arm slowly faded into a dull, exhausted ache. The redness around the puncture wound did not spread further, which Samuel quietly considered the most encouraging sign of the night. Samuel leaned over him. You're stable. Harrison opened his eyes. That sounded like the polite version of a bad sentence. It is, but you are very lucky. How lucky? Samuel paused. If that pin had pricked a vein instead of the pad of your thumb, or if you had pressed harder or held longer, we might be having a different conversation in intensive care. As it is, the dose that entered your bloodstream was small. Your body will process it. You will feel terrible tomorrow. You will feel mortal for a week, but you will be here for both of those. Harrison turned his head toward the ceiling. Ivy's voice came back to him. Don't open it. He saw her small arms wrapped around the green silk box. He saw himself taking it from her. That memory struck harder than the ache in his arm. A nurse stepped in. Your family is waiting. Your sister is threatening to reorganize the hospital if she does not see you soon. Samuel sighed. That tracks. A few minutes later, Harrison was moved to a private room. The lights were dimmer there. The windows looked out over the city where traffic moved in thin streams of red and white. Harrison lay propped against the pillows, an IV line taped to his hand, his evening jacket gone, his shirt collar open. Beatrice entered first. For a moment she was not the iron-willed matriarch of the Vale family. She was simply an older sister looking at her brother in a hospital bed. "You scared me," she said. "I'm sorry. I'm not interested in apologies yet." Her mouth tightened, almost a smile, then faded. She sat beside him and touched his hand carefully, avoiding the bandaged thumb. "Why did you open it, Harrison?" He looked away. "Because I wanted to believe Ivy was wrong." Beatrice did not answer immediately. Then she said, "Wanting a child to be mistaken is not the same as proving she is." "I know. Do you?" He closed his eyes. "I took the box back from her, B. I held it in my own hands and pulled it away from a young girl who was trying to stop me. And I cut the ribbon while she watched." His sister's face softened. "Yes, you did. And now you do something different, starting tonight." The door opened again and Reed stepped in with Owen. They both looked relieved, though Reed hid it behind a hard expression. "Still with us?" Reed asked. "Unfortunately for my enemies," Harrison said weakly. Owen came to the other side of the bed. "Dad, you look awful." "Good to see you too. I'm touched." The small exchange eased the room for half a breath. Then, reality returned. Reed lowered his voice. "Samuel told Malcolm the substance on the pin was not standard. He doesn't want to guess on record yet, but the early reading says it was something synthetic, designed." Harrison looked at him. "Designed for what?" "To enter through a small wound and act quickly without leaving an obvious cause of death if a doctor weren't already next to you." Reed's jaw tightened. "Harrison, if Samuel had been seated at the other end of the table or out in the lobby taking a call the way he sometimes does, he would have reached you moments later. Samuel is the only reason this isn't going a different way. Samuel and Ivy." A knock sounded at the door. Grace stood outside with Ivy beside her. Grace looked as though she wanted to disappear into the wall. "I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Vale." "Come in," Beatrice said. Grace entered slowly. Ivy stayed close to her mother, rabbit tucked under one arm. Her eyes went straight to Harrison. He looked back at her for a long moment. The room seemed to understand that something important was passing between them. Harrison spoke first. "Ivy." "Yes, sir. I should have listened to you." Ivy did not look proud. She did not look pleased. She looked like a child who had been doubted by every adult in a beautiful ballroom and had still kept her hands wrapped around the truth. "I tried to stop you," she said. "I know you took the box back." "Yes," Harrison said quietly. "I did." Owen looked away, blinking fast. Grace pressed her lips together. Harrison continued, "That was my mistake, not yours. The grown-ups in that room failed you tonight. I failed you tonight." Ivy thought about that the way she thought about everything. Carefully. Fairly. "Are you going to be okay?" "Dr. Brooks says I will." She nodded once, serious and small. "Good." The door opened before anyone could say more. Victoria Lang entered with a tissue in one hand and tears shining on her face. "Harrison." Everyone turned. Victoria had changed nothing about her appearance except the expression. Her emerald gown was still perfect. Her diamond earrings still caught the light. Now she looked fragile, devastated, almost ceremonial in her grief. She rushed toward the bed. "Oh, thank God, they wouldn't tell me anything. I thought I had lost you. I've known you since you were a college kid, sleeping on a dorm couch. I thought—" Beatrice stood. Victoria stopped just short of the bed as if noticing the coldness of the room for the first time. "Why is everyone looking at me like that?" she asked, pressing the tissue to her mouth. "Harrison, please, say something." Harrison studied her. This was the woman who had stood beside him at his first board meeting many years ago. The woman who had cried at his wife's funeral. The woman who had helped plan tonight, who had insisted on the green silk box at the center of the table, who had watched him pull it away from a small, frightened child. Now she looked like the victim of the evening. "I'm alive," Harrison said. Victoria gave a wounded little laugh through her tears. "That's all you have to say to me. What would you like me to say? That you know I would never hurt you. That this is some terrible mistake by the dealer. That a pin was missed in the manufacturing of an antique board, that an awful child has confused you." Ivy did not flinch. Grace felt Ivy shift beside her, but the girl did not step back. She looked at Victoria, the way she had looked at the gift room hours earlier, quietly, steadily, without blinking. Beatrice's voice was sharp. "Careful, Victoria." Victoria looked at her. "Beatrice, I am the one being accused of trying to murder a man I have loved like a brother for many years. Am I not allowed to be hurt?" "You are allowed to be hurt," Reed said from near the wall. "You are not allowed to intimidate a witness." Victoria stared at him. "A witness? She is a young girl." Ivy lifted her chin. "I saw you." Victoria's tears paused only for a second. But it was a second, and every adult in the room saw it. Then she covered her face again. "This is cruel. I checked the box because I wanted everything perfect. I touched it. Yes, of course I touched it. I wrapped it. I placed it. But not the way she says. Not the way you are all imagining. Harrison, you know me." Harrison did not answer. Victoria moved closer to the bed, her voice softening into something intimate. The voice she had used at every dinner, every fundraiser, every quiet moment after a hard board meeting. "Harrison, look at me. We were supposed to toast your milestone birthday tonight. We were supposed to be laughing right now. Please don't let fear destroy many years." Harrison looked at his sister, then at Grace, then at Ivy. Finally, he turned back to Victoria. "Samuel sealed the pin." Victoria blinked. "Of course. That's wise. The chess set is being tested. The lining, the velvet, the card, the ribbon. I would expect nothing less. The gift room cameras are being pulled." That was when something changed. Not much, not enough for everyone to see, but Harrison saw it. Beatrice saw it too. A slight tightening around Victoria's mouth. A small delay before the next breath. Then she recovered. "Good," Victoria said. "Then the cameras will prove I did nothing wrong." "Maybe they will," Harrison said. The room held its breath. Victoria's tears returned, but now they seemed to arrive with effort. "I cannot do this," she whispered. "I came here because I love you, and I am being treated like a criminal in your hospital room while a child stares at me like I'm a monster." "No one called you that," Reed said. "You didn't have to." She turned toward the door, then stopped and looked back at Harrison, dignified and beautiful under the hospital lights. "When you are ready to remember who has stood beside you for half your life, call me." She left before anyone could answer. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then Ivy said very quietly, "She looked scared when you said cameras." Harrison looked at her. Grace touched Ivy's shoulder. "Baby?" "No," Harrison said. "Let her speak." Ivy met his eyes. "She didn't look scared when you were sick. She looked scared when you said cameras." Beatrice slowly sat back down. Samuel returned just then, holding a tablet. He looked around the room, sensing the shift. "Did I miss something?" Harrison's gaze stayed on the door. Victoria had closed behind her. "No," he said. "I think we are just beginning." That night, as the hospital settled into its quieter hours, and the machines beside Harrison's bed kept steady rhythm, the Vale family remained close. Grace and Ivy were given a small room nearby to rest, though Grace sat awake for a long time, one hand on her daughter's back, staring at the wall. Harrison did not sleep much either. The pin had brought him to the hospital. Ivy's warning had followed him there. But Victoria's face, when he mentioned cameras, stayed with him most of all. By dawn, he knew 3 things with a clarity that made the bandaged thumb on his hand throb harder. Someone had hidden a contaminated pin inside his birthday gift. A child had watched it happen. And the woman he had trusted for many years was far more afraid of the cameras than she had ever been of losing him. Malcolm Reed arrived at the hospital a little after dawn with a leather portfolio in one hand and the look of a man who had not slept, because the truth had kept him company all night. He was tall, gray-haired, and built like a retired wrestler who had decided to wear suits anyway. He had been Harrison's chief of security for many years and had personally vetted Victoria Lang for every level of access she now held. Harrison saw the look on his face and understood that part of Malcolm's sleepless night had been spent reviewing his own decisions. "Show me," Harrison said before Malcolm had even closed the door. Malcolm placed the portfolio on the rolling table and opened it. Several printed stills lay inside, arranged in sequence. "You need to understand something before you see these," Malcolm said quietly. "The footage is clear. It is not flattering to Ms. Lang." Harrison held out his hand. "Malcolm, she planted a poisoned pin in my birthday gift. I am past flattering." Malcolm slid the first photograph across the table. Victoria entered the gift room alone earlier that evening, her clutch tucked under one arm, her green silk box held carefully in both hands. Posture relaxed, smile gone. The face of a woman alone in a room she did not know was being watched. The second photograph changed everything. Victoria had set the box on the side table. The base of the box was tilted. The false bottom slid partway out. In her right hand she held a small glass vial with a fine cap. In her left, a pair of forceps gripped a slender silver pin. The motion was the slow, precise motion of a woman who had practiced this possibly many times. The third photograph showed the pin being threaded into the underside of the velvet lining. The fourth showed her dipping the very tip of the pin into the vial, just once. The fifth showed her sliding the false bottom back into place, repositioning the chess pieces, and brushing the green silk with the palm of her hand. The sixth photograph showed Ivy half hidden behind the tall potted palm by the door. The child's small face turned toward Victoria, her stuffed rabbit pressed against her chest. Harrison stopped breathing for a moment. She was right there. "Yes," Malcolm said. "Exactly where she said she was." The next image showed an unfamiliar man at the side service door of the gift room. He wore a black catering jacket, but his face did not belong to the catering staff Grace had hired. He was older than the waiters, with a beard trimmed close to the jaw and eyes that seemed used to watching exits. Victoria handed him a small envelope. He nodded once and stepped back out the service door. Beatrice leaned in carefully without touching the photo. "Who is he?" "We are working on that," Malcolm said. "He was on the catering list as a replacement server. The staffing agency confirmed nobody by that name was ever assigned. The signature on his shift slip was forged. We are running the face." Harrison stared at the picture for a long moment. "He used the back service entrance." "Yes. Either Victoria let him in or he had previous access. Given that he knew the layout, the cameras he kept his head turned away from, and the timing of staff rotations. I do not believe this was his first visit to your estate." Reed exhaled slowly. "Harrison, this isn't just Victoria." "No," Malcolm said. "This is organized." Samuel stepped in then with a tablet. He had been waiting outside long enough that he had clearly been told to listen first and speak second. "Lab called back," he said. "The substance on the pin is a synthetic toxin not commonly available. Not commercial, not pharmaceutical. The chemist who looked at the preliminary panel said the design priority appears to be small dose effectiveness through a minor skin breach. Designed to look like a heart event if a doctor wasn't already present." The room went still. Beatrice stood and walked to the window, not because she wanted the view, but because her anger needed somewhere to go. Harrison closed his eyes for a moment. Then he opened them. "Malcolm, the study at the estate. Victoria was there last week." "Yes. She told Grace she was looking for a photograph from your earlier milestone birthday. There are no photographs in the study, Harrison. All of those are in the library." Beatrice turned slowly. What did she really want? Malcolm had already opened his portfolio to a second page. I had your assistant pull the access logs overnight. In recent weeks, the digital signature pad on your study desk has been used outside of your active working hours multiple times. Most of those nights you were either at a board dinner, on a flight, or asleep in the East Wing. Harrison stared at him. What was signed? That is what I need you to look at. He turned the page. A list of internal documents. Some were routine. Many were not. Harrison's eyes scanned the list and slowly settled on 3 lines near the bottom. Amendment to the Vail Industries Voting Trust. Temporary chair authorization. Conditional asset transfer provision in the event of medical incapacitation. Victoria's name appeared as the contingency officer in all 3. She rewrote the chain. Harrison said quietly. Beatrice crossed the room. What does that mean? It means if I had been declared medically incapacitated, even for a short period, Victoria would have stepped into temporary control of the voting trust, the chair position, and the asset accounts, long enough to move shares, long enough to authorize a sale. To whom? Reed asked. Harrison didn't have to think long. The same buyer she has been pushing me toward for years. The one I have refused every single time. The one whose representative she keeps bringing to dinners she organizes. Malcolm nodded slowly. We pulled flight records this morning. Several of those representatives flew into the city this week. None of them are still here. They left yesterday afternoon. Owen's voice was low. Before the party. Before the party, Malcolm confirmed. Harrison leaned back against the pillows. For a long moment he said nothing. The bandaged thumb on his hand throbbed with a quiet, insistent rhythm that felt like a clock counting down something he could not yet name. They were waiting for the news, he said finally. They were going to fly back in the moment my obituary ran. Beatrice's voice was hard. And Victoria would have signed the deal as acting chair while you were still warm. Yes. Reed ran a hand down his face. Many years she stood next to you. She stood next to my money, Harrison said. She stood next to my access. The friendship was the path. It was never the destination. A nurse knocked and entered briefly, checked his IV, and left without comment. Hospitals had a way of carrying on through earthquakes. Malcolm, Harrison said. Where is she now? Her apartment. She arrived home early this morning. She has not left, but she has made several phone calls. One to her attorney, one to a private banker, one to a number we are still tracing. She is preparing to move. Yes. Harrison looked at his sister. B, I need to go home. You are not leaving this hospital. I am not leaving the bed. I am leaving the hospital. I want to be in my own study when she is brought in. I want her to see the room she copied my signature from. I want this to end where it started. Beatrice studied him. There was a long, slow breath. Then she nodded once. Samuel sighed. I knew this was coming. A few hours, then I want him back here for observation. A few hours, Harrison agreed. By late morning, Harrison was home. Not the home of the night before. That home had been a backdrop for a betrayal. This was something else. The staff stood quietly in the entry hall as he was wheeled through, and one by one they nodded to him. Not with pity, but with a kind of fierce respect. They had heard. They had all heard. Ivy's name had moved through the staff quarters before sunrise, and, by the time Harrison came home, every man and woman who worked under that roof understood that a young girl had done what none of them had managed to do. Grace stood near the corridor to the staff wing, with Ivy beside her. Harrison saw them and asked the nurse to stop the wheelchair. Ivy, he said, I want you and your mother in the study with me when this is finished, if your mother is willing. Grace looked startled. Sir, she's a child. You don't have to. I want her to see that adults can do the right thing when a child tells the truth, Harrison said. I want her to know it isn't always the way it was last night. Grace's eyes filled, but she nodded. Yes, sir. By that afternoon, Malcolm's team had located the man from the gift room. The name on the list was not his real name. His real name was Damian Cross, and he had a long, quiet history of contract work for people who paid in cash and bought in silence. He had been picked up at a small private airstrip outside the city trying to board a chartered flight under another name. Inside his bag were 2 passports, a substantial amount of cash, and a small leather case containing additional glass vials of the same toxin Samuel had described. Additional vials. Harrison stared at the photograph of the case for a long moment. "She had a list," he said. Malcolm nodded. "We assume so. Cross has not said a word yet, but the list is in his head, and he is in a room with people whose job is to find lists in heads. Lawfully, patiently. Victoria now." Harrison's car pulled into the long drive of Victoria Lang's penthouse building later that day. 2 unmarked vehicles followed at a polite distance. Malcolm rode beside him. Beatrice refused to stay behind. Samuel came too, because he had stopped pretending he had any control over what Harrison did, and because he wanted to be there in case the day had any more surprises. Victoria was already in the lobby when they arrived. She stood by the elevators in a soft cream coat, a small overnight bag at her feet. The same diamond earrings from the party still in her ears. She had not slept either. The makeup was perfect, but her eyes betrayed her. She saw Harrison through the glass doors, and her shoulders dropped half an inch. Not in defeat, in recalculation. He stepped through the doors with the help of his cane. The bandaged hand stayed in his coat pocket. "Victoria," she said softly, "you should not be on your feet. I am not staying on them long. I came to say one thing." Victoria's mouth lifted into the small practiced smile she had worn at every charity gala for many years. "Then say it." "I trusted you," Harrison said. "I am not here to ask you why. I do not care why anymore. People like you always have a why, and the why is always smaller than the people you stepped on to get there. I am here to tell you that the chess set is in evidence. The pin is in evidence. The cameras are in evidence. The signature pad is in evidence. The voting trust amendment is being voided this afternoon. Damian Cross was picked up earlier today. He had additional vials in his bag." She did not blink. He admired that in a way he was not proud of. "And the little girl?" Victoria asked. "She is at my home in my study, where she will sit beside me when this is done." Victoria's smile finally faltered. "Harrison, please, I have known you for— You have known my schedule for many years," he said. "You have known my access. You have known my weaknesses. You have not known me. If you had known me, you would have understood that the one thing I would never forgive is a child being humiliated in my own house for telling the truth." 2 officers stepped through the doors behind him. They were polite. They were quiet. Victoria did not resist. She had been preparing for many endings in her life. But a small girl behind a potted palm had not been in any of them. And Harrison saw the moment she understood that her plan had failed not because of a security flaw or a forensic mistake, but because she had taken her glass vial out of her purse in a room where a child happened to be looking at flowers. As she was led past him, she paused once. "She is a remarkable child." "Yes," Harrison said. "She is." Then Victoria was gone, and Harrison stood in the lobby of a building he had visited many times and realized he would never enter it again. Some weeks later, on a quiet afternoon, the study at the Vale estate was full of soft light. The signature pad was gone. The desk had been moved a few inches to the left, which Harrison had decided was as much exorcism as a piece of furniture could provide. A new chess set sat on a low table by the window. A simple wooden one with no false bottom, no velvet lining, no antique provenance. Just pieces and a board. Ivy sat on one side of the board, her stuffed rabbit on the chair beside her. Harrison sat on the other. "You move first," he said. "White always moves first. That is the only rule that is not negotiable in this room anymore." She slid a pawn forward. He slid one back. Grace sat near the window watching them, a cup of tea cooling in her hands. She had not yet adjusted to her new title, which Harrison had simply called head of household with full authority. Because Grace had told him very politely the morning after he came home that if she was going to manage his estate, she was not going to manage it the way the last person had. He had laughed for the first time in weeks. In a small wooden box on the desk sat the paperwork for a trust in Ivy's name. Education through graduate school. A modest home for Grace when she was ready. A monthly stipend that did not turn them into anyone but themselves. It was, Harrison had told his sister, the smallest amount of money he had ever spent that mattered the most. Beatrice stepped into the doorway, watched her brother lose a knight to a young girl, and shook her head with a smile. "You're letting her win." "I am not," Harrison said. "She is winning." Ivy did not look up from the board. "I'm winning." Outside the window, the long lawn rolled down toward the lake, and somewhere far beyond it, in a courtroom across the city, a former best friend was learning what it cost to underestimate a child behind a plant. This story reminds us that the truth often arrives in the smallest voice in the room, and that ignoring it can cost more than we know. It teaches that wealth, status, and lifelong friendship are not the same as character, and that real strength is not in refusing to be wrong, but in being willing to listen when a child stands in front of an entire room and says, "Please, sir, stop." Ivy's courage shows that integrity does not depend on age. Harrison's journey shows that the most powerful thing a grown man can do is admit a mistake and protect the person who tried to warn him. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and tell us where you are watching from. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that matter.